Hey, what's up guys? This is Abhinav, and today we're going to be taking a look at a Flutter package called Flutter Overlay Window. As you can probably guess by the name, it's a package used to create overlay windows, or in terms of Flutter, any widget, and display it on top of other widgets or applications on your phone. A little caveat about this package is that currently it only works for Android, and the reason for that is the API that lets you display your widget or app on top of other applications is only supported by Android. So in this video, I'll be basically taking you guys through the installation process of the package, the usage of the package, on what kind of functionalities are available and how it can be used, as well as it'll dive into how the package is implemented, as one of the main things I have a problem when in using packages that are available is understanding how it works. So if I understand how it works, I would know what I would need to change if I need to change something. So let's get straight to it. To install the package, just head on down to the installation section. First, we would need to add the Flutter dependency to our package or pubspec.yaml file. Then that would look something like this. So as you can see here, under the dependencies tag, we have added the Flutter overlay window version 0.3.3. To get the actual version of it, you can just head on over to the installing tab and get the latest version. Now, these are the two important things. We would need to make two changes into the Android manifest file. First is to add the user permission for system alert window. This permission allows your application to be displayed over other applications on your phone, and is very important to get functionality such as this one over here, or even all three of them, to be honest, so that it can be displayed on top of whatever is currently being displayed on your screen. And the second one is basically letting Android know that we are using something called an overlay service. So that's part of the Flutter overlay Windows package. So we will get into more detail on why we are using this overlay service in the implementation section of it. But for now, we would just need to add these two things. So let's just quickly do that. First is the user permission. So your Android manifest file would be under your Android tab, your app, src, main, and that's where it would be. So the first user permission, we would need to add it right under the manifest tag over here, right above the application tag. And the second one, which is the services tag, you would need to add inside the application tag. So that would be right over here inside the application tag, right before the activity tab. So that does it for the installation on changing the configurations. Now the actual function, which is the main thing that would actually run, or the widget that is going to be displayed when you show the when you do the show overlay function for this, is this part. We would specifically need to add it to our main dot, and the function name should also be exactly the same. We will get into the specifics of that as well during the implementation section, but for now, we can just copy this and paste it in our main dot. Okay, I've modified it slightly so that, but overall, the basic functionality is that there should be a function named overlay main, which does a run app and returns any widget that you want. So this widget is the one that will be shown when you actually do the show overlay part of it. So now that we're done with the installation, let's check out what are the APIs that are available. I'll just quickly go through what are the different functionalities that are available and what you may do with them. I'll not go too in depth with them as it's quite a simple package and quite self-explanatory. The meat of this is and how it is actually implemented. So let's get started with this. So the the Flutter overlay window package has quite a few useful functions. The first two functions that we can check over here is the is permission granted or is request permission function. So if you remember correctly, when we had added the when we had made changes to the Android manifest file, right, we had added this user's permission system alert window. So this is a permission that we would explicitly need to ask. So these APIs actually do let us do that. Um, if you see over here, the request permission one actually gives you a pop-up that requesting you for permission, like how Google Maps would ask for the location permission, right? So this would ask for the system alert window permission, and the above function is permission granted would actually check whether the permission has already been granted so that you don't keep asking for the same permission even if you have it. Now, the meat of the content or the actual API, the main API that actually is in work is the show overlay one. This is the one that's responsible for showing the widget that you put inside overlay main. So this has a lot of functionalities such as height, width, alignment, the flag. The flag basically sets what kind of a widget it'll be, whether it can be passed through, where do you want to touch through it, such as this filter that's over here. And counter to that is the close overlay function, which does exactly what you expect it to. Then there's the share data function. So this function is very important. This is the one that's responsible for sharing the data between different parts of the application. So, for example, if you have your main application running, and then you have you have your overlay as well running. If you want to send some data through from your main to your overlay, you would do it through share data. And how would you access that data, you might ask? That's where the next function is, which is the listener. This listens to any event on the Flutter overlay window, and basically as soon as you share data, this event would pop up in the event as an event on this on the listener, and you can basically parse it however you want. Then yeah, the next ones are pretty simple. One is to resize and the other is to update the flag. That is, what if you want to make it from transparent to actually not transparent or not click through basically. Yeah, that's about it on the functionality side of it. A small example of the overlay widget is something like this. When I click on this fab button, a small overlay will come up, and when I click on it again, it will close itself. The implementation is simple. This is what my main function looks like. My main function basically checks whether I have the permission or not, and then asks for permission, and then it runs this my app. The my app is quite simple. It's just a normal material app with a scaffold and a floating action button. The on top of the floating action button looks something like this. This is for people that are familiar. This is just the default starter project of Flutter when you initialize Flutter through Android Studio. So if you take a look at it, what we're doing is whenever we click this button, if the Flutter overlay window is already active, we close it. If it is not, we show it. That's pretty much it. Know what the package is capable of, you might be wondering how it exactly works. Why does a function that you define under main.dart get displayed when you call show overlay, for example? To answer that, it's quite simple. What you've installed, what this package is actually a Flutter plugin. So a couple of things happen when you install a Flutter plugin or any Flutter plugin. The first thing that happens is when if you go into Android app, your app folder, source, main, under Java, under io.flutter.plugins, you'll see a generated plugins registrar. Now, this is a generated file as it says here, and it's a Java-based file. This file or this function inside this file, the register with function that is, runs every time the app is open. So what it does is basically it's just a Java function that accepts an argument called Flutter Engine. For the scope of this video, you do not need to know what a Flutter Engine is, but what it essentially does is it adds plugins to the Flutter Engine. Now in this case, as you can see, it adds as you can see over here, the Flutter overlay window plugin. So we will get into what this Flutter overlay window plugin class or what function, whatever this is. We'll get into that soon. But essentially, there are two parts of it. One is the Flutter side of the code. That is, if you call show overlay, there's a Flutter function that does certain things. And then there's the Android part of the code, which listens to what the Flutter code is doing and basically shows with the widget that you have on the overlay main function that shows the widget on top of the screen. It's two simple parts of it. So let's get into it. Okay, so what exactly is this Flutter overlay window plugin that gets added over here? To find that out, just right click on your project and go into Flutter and select Open Module in Android Studio. Yep. So now that the Android module has loaded up, what we're interested in is in Flutter overlay window, Java. Now over here, there's a couple of files that you can see, but the one that we saw on the register with function inside the generated files in Java, right, is the Flutter overlay window plugin. So this is the class that gets initialized or gets added to the engine. Now there are a lot of things over here, but yeah, we'll only focus on what is relevant for us as of now. So let's go to the functions that it has. The first function that you will come across is on attached to engine function. So if you remember correctly, on the register with function, what it actually does is it adds the plugin to a Flutter engine. Now, as you have probably guessed from the name, this function is runs when it gets attached to the Flutter engine or when it gets added to the Flutter engine. What this function basically does in a gist is create something called a method channel with a certain key. The method channel is nothing but a way through which Flutter can call functions on the native or Android side of things. That is what we need to understand from this. So now that this has been method channel has been established, there's something called on method call. As I will restate again, a method channel is a way through which Flutter can call functions on the Android side. So on method call is a function that listens to such calls from the Flutter side. So this function in a gist is nothing but a function that's a listener on the Android side that's waiting for things from the Flutter side. We will get into what this function does soon. Now the other function that is important is on attached to activity function. This function also gets triggered as soon as you open the app, and what it does is it creates a new Flutter engine and a new Dart executor. And as you can see from here, the Dart executor entry point is an overlay main. Now this is why a function that you define in main.dart called overlay main gets picked up from the Android side of things, or whenever you call show overlay. And what it does is basically just caches it. We will come into why it is caching later. But for now, this is what is on the Android side. There are other functions over here, such as on detached to engine from engine that you can probably guess whenever it gets removed from the Flutter engine. This is what is get triggered and so on. But for us, our relevant functions are on attached to engine, which caches the Flutter engine with the overlay main function in it. The method call function, which listens to things from the Flutter side, waiting for listens to things from the Flutter side on the Android side, and the on attached to engine function, which basically creates the method channel, which enables the on method call function to listen to it. Now back on the Flutter side, if we go into our external libraries, our Flutter plugins, you'll see the Flutter overlay window plugin, of course. If I just go into the lib, there's just one file in this case, this is the Flutter overlay window.dart. Now this file has all the functions that we actually use on the Flutter side, such as, for example, show overlay, is permission granted, request permission, close overlay, and basically every other function that we actually call on the Flutter side. So what this basically does is whenever we basically call this site, there are a couple of static things that are defined over here. But the main thing that we're worried about or concerned with is this method channel. If you remember correctly, on the Android side also we define a method channel with a certain key. Now this is the same key through which we're defining the method channel on in this side as well. So the method channel is a way through which Flutter can call functions on the native side. So if we define a method channel on the Flutter side and on the Android side with the same key, now Flutter can communicate with the Android native side. So what actually happens when you call the show overlay function? Of course, it takes all these arguments and guessed it right. It calls the method channel and invokes the method show overlay. It's the same case with every other function as well. Takes the method channel and invokes check permissions. For example, in cursor is permission granted. Same case for close overlay as well. So that's about it on the Flutter side of things and how it handles or how it calls functions on the Android side. Now back on the Android side, whenever you call, for example, show overlay or any other function, for example, if check permission, every function would come onto this listener because it's listening to what is happening on the Flutter side. And when Flutter calls a method, it comes onto here. In case of check permission, it checks for the result of success or whether the permission has actually been granted. But what the main thing that we're concerned with is how exactly does it show the widget that is defined inside overlay main. Now we've already established that the on activity attached to activity function, which is also triggered on startup, caches the widget that we have overlay main widget into the Flutter engine cache. Okay, so we've established that the widget has already been cached. Now, but how does it exactly be displayed? Now on the show overlay function call, it basically gets all the arguments, and at the end of it, what it does is it basically starts a service with a certain intent. So the intent in this case is the overlay service.class. Now, as you've probably guessed it, there's an overlay service.class right in this folder, which basically gets started. Let's head on over to there. So again, there are a couple of things, a lot of things are going on over here, but we can ignore them for now. What we're concerned with is two functions. The first one is the on create function. This is the function that it's called when the overlay service class is created. Uh, we can ignore that for now. It just creates a notification channel. This is required as any background service that is running in Android requires a notification channel attached to it. This is the first function that's important, that gets triggered whenever the overlay service is called, and the other function that basically gets called when the overlay service is started, which is what is happening over here. Context.start service with of overlay service is the start command or the on start command function. What this basically does is it's a simple function. It checks whether the overlay window is open or closed. If it is closed, it opens it, and if it is open, it closes it. That's all about it. How it does is basically it takes something called a Flutter view, a Flutter, as you can see over here. It Now what it does is first it takes a Flutter engine, to reiterate, and from where exactly is it? From the cache. And what exactly does it get? It again, now, if you remember correctly, we had cached the overlay main function into the Flutter engine. It gets the same widget from the Flutter cache and creates a Flutter view. A Flutter view is nothing but an Android view which is compatible with Flutter. For the sake of this video, that is out of the scope. But what you need to understand is a view is nothing but what you see on the UI. So it creates a Flutter view from the Flutter engine that was being cached, and then all it does is it shows the overlay whenever we call show overlay. Yep, that's about it. That's about it on the package. I hope you understand how exactly a Flutter plugin, or in this case, this package is implemented, and hope this helped you to change or tweak things if required. Let me know if I should do anything different for the next video, and I'll see you guys next time.